What's going on, everyone? My name is Nicholas Merton here at DataDash, and today is March 24th of 2022. Well, folks, I hope you are having a fantastic day wherever you are, and in today's video, I want to spend some time to dive in to our top 3 altcoins for quarter 2 of 2022. As many of you have noticed, the market has started to grow exciting once more. Bitcoin and Ethereum have not only started to trend higher, but on top of that as well, we're seeing a whole range of altcoins leading in their respective industries, up over double-digit percentage points over the past week or so. So I think it's an appropriate time for us to dive into some exciting projects in the space. But even though I'm going to try to keep this video relatively brief and not ramble on too long, I think there's a few important disclaimers that need to be said up front, so please stay tuned. First off, I think it's important to note that anything I'm sharing here today is not meant or deemed to be financial advice. Don't take what I say or what anyone else says for that matter at face value. Do your own due diligence, do your own research, and make sure that if you decide to invest in any of these projects, that you not only really like the project yourself, but on top of that, understand your time frame preference. For me, I'm investing in a lot of these long-term. I have a long-term thesis for these projects. So that's an important thing. Second off, it's important to note that all the projects I'm going to be talking about today, I want to do my best to showcase if I have an investment position in these projects, and on top of that as well, if I'm affiliated in some capacity with them. And last but not least, it's important to note that even if you go out and do your own due diligence after this video on one of these projects and you fall in love with it, don't go all in on one project, guys. I wouldn't do it myself, and I wouldn't recommend you guys do that as well. I think that's an important thing to note that unfortunately, too many people in crypto, Twitter and YouTube don't mention enough. Don't go all in on one thing, guys. Make sure you have good exposure to the large caps like Bitcoin and Ethereum, and also make sure to understand the risk profile of any investments you make, okay? So let's go ahead and dive into the long-awaited conversation, guys. You've waited on long enough. The first one we're gonna be diving into is Unibrite. Now, if you guys have been viewers at the channel for a long period of time, you probably have heard me mention about Unibrite before because it was the first project I became an advisor for back in the bear market of 2018. Now, I wanna go ahead and do a quick history lesson here about Unibrite and why I joined onto the project, because I think that speaks volumes as to why I liked it as a project. Unibrite has always had a focus on solving major problems within the crypto space, predominantly those around the enterprise adoption of blockchain and smart contracts. The first project that Unibrite had launched was the Unibrite Framework, and it had a simple goal in mind: to mitigate a lot of problems and issues that were serving as barriers from enterprise companies getting into the cryptocurrency space. And this basically was solving a variety of issues, from simplifying the creation and generation of smart contracts through the Unibrite framework using components and very simple elements to be able to build things without needing to have a Solidity engineer on board. And on top of that as well, being able to deploy across many different language frameworks and therefore many other layer 1 blockchains. And on top of that, having things such as ERP compatibility, so you could be able to plug into traditional architectural systems for enterprise companies. And on top of that, having the Unibrite Explorer, so you could actually gain visual insights from these smart contracts. That was back in 2018 and 2019. But since then, Unibrite has been building a whole suite of products, such as its free equity platform that allows for security token generation. And on top of that, its new long-awaited project, Baseledger, which is using the baseline standard for allowing companies to be able to interact and collaborate with one another in a streamlined way, removing a lot of the friction points that enterprise companies would have had interacting on the traditional Ethereum blockchain by itself. So, what is Baseledger in this case? Because if we're to understand what UBT is, all the while we are going to dive into the token later on and how it plays a role, we need to understand what Baseledger is. To put it very simply, all the while we're not going to go way too deep into it, Baseledger is a layer 1 or layer 2 network that utilizes the tenement consensus mechanism utilized on Cosmos to be able to allow enterprises to do a variety of functions and transaction types, such as invoicing, etc., that they just simply wouldn't be able to do in a reasonable nature on layer 1 blockchains like Ethereum that have just grown too expensive, but also don't factor in for a whole range of things that companies and enterprise companies, especially here in Europe, have to be considerate of. And it's just going to be bigger and bigger as it scales across the world. And that's things like GDPR compliance and a whole range of other benefits that companies need to consider when utilizing blockchain and smart contracts. So for example, here we can see the low predictable cost framework. We can see that there's high performance, data compliance here, having the ability or the right to be forgotten, so it can be GDPR compliant, allow enterprise companies to actually utilize real data, real information, real transaction capacity on these layer 1s, or in this case, the Baseledger protocol, which I see as kind of like a layer 2 with its scalability, right? And on top of that as well, multi-chain coordination, being able to still interact with this traditional highly secure networks like Ethereum and Bitcoin, and having still maintained built-in integration with ERP systems. This is an incredibly big feat here. And I think one thing that's important to note here about Unibrite is that Unibrite didn't get here overnight. As I mentioned, they've been around since as far back as 2018. They were building before then. Both Stefan and Martin have a long weighted history working with ERP systems and traditional enterprise systems. But it's important to note here that above all, this has been the culmination of a lot of lessons learned. There's been a lot of MVPs and demos that Unibrite has built over the past few years. And all the while blockchains and kind of layer one protocols out there always talk about partnerships and enterprise relations. It's important to note that so many of them end up just being MVPs and they don't end up getting used in the space. And what I love is that Unibrite in this case, through Baseledger and also working with its respective partners, is aiming towards building a system that is actually going to allow for real enterprise applications and is going to put UBT as a token at the center point of it. It's an extraordinary concept. It takes some time to digest and we won't be able to break it all down here in today's video, but I think you guys get the general drift of what Unibrite is focused on. Whether bull markets or bear markets, they've been building these systems to basically fix the issues that they've seen in the blockchain space and cryptocurrencies as a whole over the last couple of years, the barriers that have kept companies from actually utilizing blockchain technology. And again, there's some other major points here just to keep in mind: the cost of transactions, really bringing it into enterprise grade like cloud or web-based infrastructure costs rather than the high transaction costs on Bitcoin and Ethereum, and the high levels of performance as well as data compliance, integrations, support for fiat currencies, and multi-chain coordination. So one important thing here again is to note that there is no new cryptocurrency with Baseledger. And this is why I love the whole Unibrite team here. Rather than launching a whole new token, they focused on utilizing the core enterprise token here that they've built, the utility token UBT. Now, if you guys want to understand the token metrics and how UBT plays here, you can see that throughout all various different means of how the network operates, you can see that UBT is at the center point here. And there's a good brief description here of how UBT is used in a variety of ways in regards to the network. The main one, though, being staking. And the important thing to understand here is that this is non-inflationary staking here. So I think this is really going to be exciting. It's going to set demand for the UBT token. But on top of that as well, it just generally makes sense here to utilize UBT as kind of a staker proxy in this case for nodes. So again, really exciting stuff here. I recommend you guys take a deep dive here into what's going on. And all the while, I won't be doing any technical analysis on UBT. I just don't think that that's right for me being an advisor to the project. I want you all to focus on the long-term capacity of this project. This isn't something that you want to trade overnight. This isn't something that's a short-term game. Unibrite is in it for the long term. Stefan and Martin have been killing it over the past few years. I've been happy to stand by side on the project. And I think that there's a really good fostering community that's been supporting Unibrite all the way. So again, wanted to just emphasize that there, guys. I think that's important to note. Now, let's go ahead here, and after talking about Unibrite, let's go ahead and move on to our second project. I want to go ahead and dive in to a metaverse play, right? We talked about a potential kind of layer 1, layer 2 play in the market, but now I want to dive into one of the metaverse / play to earn experience games that I've been watching in the crypto space, and that is Crixivia. Now, I think the only thing that I sometimes struggle with the project is making sure I pronounced it right, but luckily I've guaranteed that I'm pretty spot on with the pronunciation. But for those of you who haven't heard about it yet, Crixivia is a play-to-earn game that gives very similar vibes to a game that I used to play back during my childhood and is still a massive game on the world stage. And it has very similar vibes to RuneScape. Now, as you all know, before we dive into the details here, you all know that the play-to-earn space has grown at significant traction. And this past year in 2021, we saw the likes of Axie Infinity. We've seen even close to AAA title games like Illuvium, all kinds of major games that are starting to take the centerpiece and showcase that play-to-earn is probably a trend to stay. And it's something that we can no longer ignore and not have exposure to some capacity, right? So what is Crixivia here? What does it offer? Crixivia is an open world MMORPG. And if you guys have played anything like RuneScape or games, for example, like World of Warcraft, this might be familiar to you. You might have already played games like this that have tens, if not hundreds of thousands to potentially millions of concurrent players on them at any given time. And I always like to use RuneScape as an example because I think both in art style and then also as well in the kind of play style capacity, Crixivia reminds me a lot of RuneScape in this capacity. And we can see here that it's not just a matter of promises here of what the game is going to be and what it's going to look like, and not just emphasis on the token. You've got actual gameplay here. And this is something that, again, I want to emphasize here when it comes to the play to earn hype that's been going on in the market. There are a lot of projects out there that simply sell you a white paper. They tell you, oh, we got this AAA team, we're going to build this and that. And they don't even have a demo to showcase of the game that they're building. You can just sense that there's not that passion, that kind of organic from the ground up look for so many play to earn and metaverse projects. But Cresivia, in my opinion, is different. If you take a look here at the footage here of the game, it not only feels like it's polished, that it's really starting to come together, but you can see the devs here all on a call together, going through and playing the game itself, showcasing the world that they've been building. And I think it's a beautiful, yet also at the same time, on a graphics capacity, scalable game that's going to allow for people to be able to actually play this on a mass scale. So I'm very excited again, and this is my thesis here for kind of play to earn investing, is to make sure that any projects I'm investing in, I don't care so much about the token metrics. I don't care so much about like the short-term hype in the market. I care about investing similar to what Sam Bankman-Fried said, the founder of FTX. When they're investing in metaverse games, they're investing in games that you would want to play, games that are actually good. And that's the thing that I see so many people missing when it comes to the play to earn space. As a gamer myself, as someone who's played games over the pretty much my entire life, I really want to emphasize that that's the missing piece that so many people are really not getting when they invest in this space. And I got to say, as someone who has played RuneScape, who knows about the addressable market of this sector, this is potentially one of the leading players here. And the thing that is so amazing to me, it's so amazing, is that Cresivia here, in the sense of circulating market cap, is only about 1.2 million, and the fully diluted is around $10 million. It's just trading at 3 cents per token here. It's had its major sell-off here from the initial listing here in the market, and we're starting to see a kickoff on the trend higher here. And I think that's an important focus point here, guys, is that, again, I'm not trying to promote this. It didn't just launch or do its token launch just yet. It's actually had its sell-off here. It's had its capitulation phase. All the early investors who weren't focused on the long term, they're out. And for transparency's sake, I bought on the spot market. I didn't get in at the ICO or anything like that. So I think that's, again, an important point to bear in mind here, that I'm focused here on the long term for this project. And I bought on the market in this case, just like all of you guys would if you were to build a position. So just an important thing to think about here, guys. Again, I think this is one of those plays in really like candid terms that, like myself and stuff, you have like a 1% to 2% exposure. And if it turns out to work out, that's great. If it turns out being the next Axie Infinity, that's awesome. And who knows, maybe it flops. There's going to be a ton of projects in the crypto space that flop. That's with any new trend in the market. But again, I have a long-term capacity in this project, and I'm excited to see how it continues to develop. You guys can follow their dev blog on their website to follow some of the updates they had, like back in January, they talked about the combat system, all kinds of stuff. And I'm excited to see more coming out, but they're silently building behind the scenes, not overhyping things, and I really like that personally. All right. Last but not least, let's go ahead and dive in to probably the biggest heavy hitter here within the top 3 plays here, and that is Radix. Now, you guys have probably heard me mention Radix here on the channel. They have been a sponsor here on the channel. I think that's just important to say, but that doesn't impact me talking about it. They're not sponsoring this mention here in the top 3 coins. I personally like Radix as a project. I'm exposed with my own money to Radix. It's one of my larger positions that I'm exposed to in the market. And the reason why I like Radix so much is because of the fundamental shift it offers comparative to other alternative layer 1s out there that are usually just standard EVM compatible blockchains that, again, are trying to do exactly what Ethereum does in a more scalable way, etc. Right? It's not that that's not a potential, focus point. There are a lot of chains out there that are respectable that do that and have major ecosystems. But Radix, more similar to Cardano or other layer 1s that have different language frameworks, different ways of actually deploying and developing smart contracts. Radix is focused on doing a radically different approach to distributed ledger technology or blockchains. So, first off, let's just go ahead here and talk about the high-level overview. Radix has one key focus point in mind. It's to make sure to do 3 things. To make sure that developers can develop smart contracts in much faster time, that security is a top priority focus, that you have much higher degrees of scalability and security here, and on top of that as well, scalability in the sense of transaction capacity. These are the 3 things that Radix is focused on doing, building from the ground up. Now, again, like we talked about with Unibrite earlier on, Radix has been a project that I've known about as far back as 2018. I didn't invest in it back then, and Radix has changed its focus over the years, but it's been building constantly about building a high throughput blockchain, starting from square one and trying to fix all of the issues that persisted within Ethereum and other traditional layer ones that led to a variety of security flaws in DeFi and NFTs, where hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars have been hacked in the process. If we're going to bring decentralized finance and all these applications on to blockchain and cryptocurrencies in the long run, we need to make sure that security and developer time to build these applications are dramatically improved from the current way they are. And this is mainly pushed through their focus on developers and their creation of the Scripto language. Now, many of you might know, like for example, that Ethereum smart contracts are powered by Solidity. Solidity is the core programming language for Ethereum smart contracts. And it's a implementation, if you will, of JavaScript. But on the other end, Scripto is an implementation or uses, in a sense, Rust as a programming language and allows for not only deploying out a language, in this case, that is probably going to be easily picked up or very familiar to a lot of people in the developer community outside of Solidity, right? Which is a bit contracted, but on top of that as well is a language and framework built to make sure that you can build smart contracts in a dramatically simplified way and make sure that security is not compromised in the process. In fact, it is bolstered compared to Solidity smart contracts that can be incredibly complex and therefore usually lead to flaws. And this has to do with taking what's known as an asset-oriented approach, whereas in this case, dApp developers or people who are building smart contracts don't really have to worry about how the asset itself can function. Because it's asset oriented in this case, you can set parameters and protections to make sure that a lot of the exploits that tend to happen on the Ethereum network and other EVM compatible chains can't happen in a framework where Scripto is the core language framework. I think that's a very important thing to understand here. Now, to just kind of go through a couple of key things here, if you guys want to dive in again to learning more about Scripto, there's some great coverage here on the developer page at developers.radix.dlt. But I want to focus again on really thinking about the roadmap here, right? Now, again, as I emphasized before, Radix is not a project you should be excited about for the next week or so. It is something that you've got to be patient, and I believe personally that my patience, my investment in the project is going to pay off. Similar to how we saw Cardano back during the depths of the bear market having its long-term focus, right? Say what you will about Cardano and stuff. One thing that I have to admire, at least, and I think that Radix mimics to a very good degree, is its focus on starting from square one, making a big bet, and on top of that, sticking to a long-term roadmap. It's not about rushing things, it's about doing things right. And what I like about Radix is that any dates that it's set so far, it has met to, as we've been following these various different dates on the roadmap. They had the beta net back about a year ago. You had the launch of Olympia back here. In this case, I think it was back during the summer or potentially back in the early fall. And then we had the launch of Alexandria. And this was the launch of revealing Scripto to the world back, I think, around November and December, where people could start to get a feel for what Scripto offered as a blockchain language. And I think what's so cool on top of this is that all the while, many people, again, you'll get different reactions here, many people are concerned that the next update here is going to be Q1 of 2023. I'm actually very excited because this is the official launch date of the entire mainnet in Q1 of 2023. I think that altcoins are going to continue to trend up in there, so it's not a concern of mine. But on top of that as well, we can see that there are many steps along the way that are going to get us to this Q1 2023 launch date. And that's important to understand here when we're talking about the timeline. Babylon, this update for the Radix network, has a whole range of different updates. The public test environment that will launch in Q2 of 2022, the Babylon AlphaNet, and the Babylon BetaNet, and eventually the final launch here. All the while throughout these different steps, we're going to get to see more and more of what Scripto has to offer here and how Scripto applications can not only service the same functionality as Solidity-based apps in EVM-compatible environments like on Ethereum, but we're going to see how they can do it better, and they're able to be built much faster and have less security vulnerabilities. This is going to be a very exciting time, and we're going to probably learn a lot on these test nets so that when it comes to mainnet, we really can have a sheer strong amount of confidence that this is going to be the blockchain network where we can start to see applications really being built on top of. So I think it's a very important thing here, the steady approach that they're doing, each quarter having these kind of milestones along the way and doing things right. But one thing I want to emphasize here before we close things off is the video that I think for me was just kind of like the selling point here. You guys know, and I've talked about it on the channel, I love Uniswap. I love DeFi as a whole. Uniswap is my favorite application. AMMs, or decentralized exchanges, hands down the best use case in DeFi so far. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. Maybe there'll be something better down the line. But there's a really cool video here with Russell, who's the CTO of Radix, going through and showcasing how you can build what he called Radiswap, which is just basically a implementation of Uniswap v2, the automated market maker, in the form of Scripto, and cutting down the original thousands of lines of code that it took to build Uniswap v2 in a matter of just in between about 100 to 200 lines of code. Talk about developer time saved. That is massive when it comes to being able to get more developers in the ecosystem. Imagine if you could build Aave, Uniswap, SushiSwap, any kind of application you can think about in the DeFi space, Curve, etc. Metaverse games, right? Anything that you can think about, NFTs. If you could build that in a matter of just a couple of hours versus multiple weeks. The big missing piece that people really don't understand or comprehend sometimes when it comes to Solidity development is that developers in Solidity, all the while there is more lines of code, not only have to spend more time than they would on Scripto building applications. Sure, that's one point. But the biggest problem that Solidity engineers have to spend their time on is going back, auditing, reviewing, and making sure that there are no vulnerabilities. Imagine trying to build a home and always feeling like you're constantly worried that something in the foundation is going to break and it's all going to collapse. That is the biggest flaw with Ethereum right now. It's not even just scalability. It's the developer environment and the developer tools and the framework that's been built from the get-go. And Ethereum's probably going to have to address that long-term in some capacity, right? It could be a major setback. And that's where, again, protocols like Radix potentially serve as a replacement, as an alternative in the market, or as potential comparative player in the space. Now, when it comes to Radix as an investment here, again, I don't want to talk so much about the TA guys. All of these are really long-term plays. But what I like about Radix here is it started to trend higher here. It started to outpace Ethereum here over the past couple of weeks, getting back to where we were here in mid-February. And I think that we're really going to start to trend higher here in regards to price, especially when we're revisiting this price range where we saw a major breakout here back in November of 2021. Now, as you all might know, for those of you who maybe were subscribed to the dashboard, we built our positions back here in September. And as you all can see, there was a major move here. But I'm going to let you all know a little secret here. I didn't trade anything. I didn't sell on the major rally in price. And the reason why I'm not is because I don't care about if Radix hits 30 cents or 50 cents. I care about when Radix is really going to come into fruition and it's going to materialize on its goals and its roadmap and see a much higher price return hopefully in the future. Now, we don't know if that's going to happen. I've got my cards betting on it and we'll see how it all goes. But I hope me having my money where my mouth is and having a position in my long-term bets and my commitment speaks volumes towards what I think about the project and all the other things that we talked about here today, guys. So I know a lot of the space is focused on the latest, greatest hype on NFTs and all these different things, but I really want to focus on the plays that I think are going to be here a year or more out, potentially years out from now. And even if you just get one of these projects right, could possibly return big in the long run. Anyways, I probably went over 15 minutes. I apologize, guys. I've broken my promise around the period of time where I was talking about the disclaimers. I talked probably a little bit longer, but if you enjoyed this video, consider dropping a like, consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon. I hope this video proved valuable for you all. And if you happen to like this kind of content here, you can always subscribe to the Dash Report down below in the description, where each month we put out the top 3 kind of plays or cryptocurrencies we're watching in the market. This is more kind of a long-term kind of viewpoint here for the next coming months. But anyways, I hope you all are having a fantastic day wherever you are. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care, everyone.